one of the ways I like to do it is to think about that everyone's got a contribution. So whatever it is that you're deciding to work on, give everyone a job. Otherwise what happens is only the people who volunteer to do it, oh, I can do that, so that person gets the job, and then all of a sudden they're the only one doing the work. So one of the things I regularly do with community groups is we make a list of all the jobs first. Whatever the jobs are, and I put them out in little tiny cards, little record cards, and put them on the table or on the floor, and then I ask everyone to pick one up. And then we build in some accountability. Okay, the next time we get together, what will you have done to make that happen? Do you need any help to make that happen? And you know, what might get in the way? So we structure it for success. Because quite often that isn't what happens. You have a meeting and everyone writes down the minutes, and then at the next meeting nobody's done the work. So building in accountability processes is absolutely critical to get the group to do the work, and definitely not the paid employee or the facilitator or whoever. Those sort of roles are there to build the conditions to enable the work to be done. Doesn't necessarily mean they are doing the work. And I see that a lot in the not-for-profit and in the voluntary sector, where often things default to the paid staff member or to the person who's retired or the person who's the busiest, and it's not shared around. So you have to build a culture around that everyone has a contribution to make, and you know, and everyone can. I've certainly worked with groups of all ages and abilities, and you can find something for everyone. It's nonsense to think you can't. It's only your imagination that gets in the way. So if that means you've got to brainstorm for longer, it's better to front end load that than pick someone up 2 months later who's exhausted, and now the whole project falls over because only one person or two people have been doing the work.
It's really easy for groups to fall into patterns. Oh, that's this person, they do this, and that's that person, that do that. And that's dangerous in a lot of ways. Like, that's a way for people that are stuck in a particular role to get burnt out and feel that, you know, they've got no choice and they're stuck with that. So a really good system to get away with around that is skill sharing and a buddy system. So, for example, sharing the role of facilitation or minute taker between meetings, so it's not the same person every time, and everyone develops their skills in that. If you're doing an action or something like that, you'll have someone in the police liaison role or the media spokes or media liaison role, and you'll have someone who's experienced, whereas someone who's brand new. And to start with, that new person is a shadow, and they'll follow the experienced person around, watch what they do and stay a little bit quiet, really. And then as they feel comfortable, they kind of move from being a shadow to a buddy, we call it. And the buddy will speak up, but be supported by that more experienced person, and if they need backup, that more experienced person can step up and help out if need be, but they're there for support. And then when that buddy feels like they're strong enough and comfortable enough and confident enough to do that task or role on their own, then they can do that. And that might take someone one time, it might take another person 5 or 10 times to feel comfortable doing that. Everyone's different, but if people are supporting each other and sharing their experience and skill, and so people feel safe and backed up, that's how you share the skills, and that's how you build a movement.
But one thing that I have done that's worked well is training up others in the skills that I have. So just recently I've helped to volunteer at the Goodie Patch, learn WordPress, and I've helped other people put together Eventbrite and that kind of. So some of those technical skills that you might have, making sure that you're handing them on to people, especially people that are really keen to learn. It was fantastic having that experience with this older volunteer that was like, teach me, and so it was a wonderful exchange of sharing skills as well, and so that you don't have to feel the burden of doing all of that, and also having multiple people that can do all of those things within one group is really important, especially when you're all volunteers and you're all busy. And invite new members into the group who have the skills that you might be lacking, which is literally what I'm trying to do now with the Urban Food Network. I'm always trying to find someone that loves admin and spreadsheets, you know, because they're always out there, and that makes a group work and tick over. And all of the projects I've been in, if you can find that kind of person that loves it and really wants to contribute their time, then that really helps, or maybe a couple of them.
Another little technique from me is, okay, let's say we have to organise something, you know, like a community market, or maybe a tree seed planting day or something, work out how many hours it's going to take. Okay, this is a 100-hour project, or this is a 20-hour project, or this is a once a week 5-hour project, or 20-minute project every day. Actually give it some write a little brief. This is what it needs to be. It's 100 hours, and then allocate the hours. Okay, you're going to do 2 hours, I'm going to do 4, someone else is going to do 6. Someone's going to do 1, but they can only do it in a week. So you treat everything, as I think works well, is to treat it as a project, and that everything has a beginning and a middle and end. Because if you feel like you're volunteering for the same thing that's going to last for the next 25 years, it's really exhausting, and you run out of puff and you don't deliver, you don't get to the end. So I think having parameters around stuff where things do have a beginning and a middle end. So if we've got a tree planting day, it's going to be in May, and between February and March we need to do these 3 things, and you know, it's a 200-hour project. That helps because people know then what they're committing to, they're clear about what the end goal is, and they know that what their contribution is actually making a difference.
Working out how to future-proof your group is certainly something that we deal with all the time, because we've got lots of groups that have been around for 20 or 30 years, and so they're reaching that sort of point where they need to recruit some new blood, some new young people, or they start to diminish down to not very many people anymore. And I guess it's about, I think all groups throughout the life cycle of their volunteer group, they're going to have ebb and flows where they've got lots of people and are busy, some projects to really work on and get their teeth sunk into, and then things might sort of quieten down for a little while, and I think that that's important to recognise. And some groups will find that they might get to a point where they haven't got as many members anymore for whatever reason, and they need a bit of a new direction. And I think stopping and taking stock of what the group's doing and looking at what they're achieving and also what their capacity is now. So that might be to do with how many members they've got, or the capacity of different members within the group, so whether they can physically do the work that they've always done, and stopping and just recognising that it's okay for that capacity to change.
I tell this story about, I moved into a new area a while back now, and I wanted to join the local theatre arts group. And they were looking for volunteers, and they'd been telling everyone how many more volunteers, and I thought, well, I could volunteer once a month down at the little community place where they have their things, and that'd be a really good way for me to meet people. So I signed up, and they said, yes, come along. So I went to my very first event that I was helping them with, and I had a really big important job. My job was to make sure the urn was filled and all the cups and saucers were out. And I was very happy with that job. However, I failed my audition because I put the urn around the wrong way, and you know, the teaspoons weren't also facing the right way. So this is, succession planning often is a good idea, but people don't necessarily want to have successes, so they were actually quite happy to keep doing the work, and they say they want extra people. So sometimes you've got to deal with that culture first, that we are open and we really do want to get new people in, and we really do want to do that. I didn't go back for a second time for that group, but I see it everywhere in community groups where people say they do want new people to come in, and they go to a lot of effort, but they actually, when those new people come in, they're not felt welcomed. They're often turned away. They are often not encouraged to come back. Nobody ever rang me again to see why I didn't come back. Nobody talked about it, you know. So that's a very common experience. So if you really want to do it well, firstly, make sure you really do want it, and that you are welcoming and everyone is serious about it, and you give people opportunities to make little steps towards it. I could have perhaps eventually become the catering person for that organisation had my first success been okayed. So you know, you need to have little successes along the way to help people feel confident, as opposed to them, you just meet them for the first time and you want them to be the secretary of the committee. That's quite a big leap, and it will probably send them away. So finding ways to take them, journey them through, so they come and say, when is the election, because I'd like to be the secretary. Then you know you've done a great job.
Celebrating achievements is really important, like keeping track of anniversaries of things that have happened in the past and acknowledging the good work of the people that have worked before you on something. So it's good to acknowledge past wins and go, these people in the however many years ago worked really hard, we can do that. So acknowledging the history of other people's wins and acknowledging your own wins and going, oh, this time last year, this is what happened, and reminding each other, and just having those chats in a often informal context really helps with people staying happy, engaged, involved, and keeping up with morale.
Ways that I acknowledge or recognise group members is that formally and informally thanking them for their contributions, and so actually thinking through what their contributions have been, because I think sometimes as a volunteer you can't even recognise the contributions that you've made, and so if someone else names them for you, that can be a really affirming process and feed into that momentum as well.
We found a really nice way is to share stories, and so I know when we've had some of our meetings that have been a bit more of a reflective meeting to look back on, okay, well, how have we gone over the last couple of months, using that opportunity of going around the table with everyone saying something that they have done really well or something they're proud of, gives everyone a chance to share. So providing that prompt question of, right, we're going around the table and I'd like everyone, if you feel comfortable, to tell us something you're really proud of that you've done over the last 2 months, for example. Lets people celebrate and feel good about it. So we've taken that approach.
Even the simple things of recognising how long somebody might have volunteered in that group for. So those reaching milestones, so if they've been in that group for 5 years, acknowledging that somehow, whether that's formally at an AGM or some sort of an event or something like that, so that they're acknowledged in front of others. I think that's really important. A lot of groups have things like newsletters, websites, social media, so acknowledging people through those platforms as well, I think is really useful. And a lot of environmental volunteers like to quietly achieve, I think, not really. And so they tend to get very quietly chuffed when they're acknowledged for what they're doing, because most of the time they're doing what they're doing because they love it and they think it's important and they don't expect that acknowledgement.